Hello and welcome to Broken Entertainment. I'm finally not sick, so I can record a video. So I watched the first episode of Batman the Caped Crusader. One, because I'm just interested in it, and two, because I want to do a review. And the first episode interested me enough to go ahead and watch the next episode, which I'll do. And, I'm just going to take it by case basis so far. The show has some weirdness going on that we'll kind of get into. I'm going to avoid spoilers as much as I can, and I've got a couple clips I want to show. But so the big criticism so far that people have on this show is you see doing the circles in the usual places. Oh, it's woke. Oh, it's DEI. Oh, it's race swapped and gender swapped, and there for sure there's a lot of both purely based on the first episode, because I have not watched the whole series. Again, we're going to do this episode by episode. First episode's not woke. I'm sorry, it's not. I understand there's race swaps and there's gender swaps, and those are their own issues, but the storytelling itself is not actually woke storytelling. Batman is Batman. Batman is the hero of the episode. Batman is not upstaged by any female character or any of that stuff. And the story is concise. It makes sense. It flows from one point to the next. Doesn't have any of those problems. What you do have is a female penguin with the worst name they could have, Oswalda Cobblepot. A female penguin, I don't support race or gender swaps. I just don't. And in this case, they kind of play it fairly low-key, in that they're not making a big deal out of her being a female penguin. It's just the penguin. That's just the penguin in this setting. They just refer to her as the penguin. There's no weird stand-up moment where she talks about the superiority of the female race or anything, which we've seen in some genuinely woke stuff. You don't see any of that. And it just treats her as, this is the penguin in this show. Is it necessary? No. Does it add anything to the character? No, not really. She's a bit of a cabaret singer, and her voice actress actually has a pretty good voice for the singing part. And it's just kind of there. There was no reason to do it, and I think that's the problem. You didn't add anything to the character. You didn't really subtract anything from the character either. But it doesn't do anything. So why not just have a different character? Why not just have it be the penguin that we all don't know? And that's where a lot of this DEI woke criticism is coming from. And then you've got J.J. Abrams, who's a very political activist kind of guy who pushes all this kind of stuff. And he's executive producer. So you've got those connections, and you've got this unnecessary gender swap that makes you go, okay, but why? But when you're watching the episode, it's just treated as just, this is the penguin, and there's no weird moments about it. There's nothing even, it comes off completely naturally in the episode. It's just not necessary to do. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add anything to have done that. So that's a significant criticism I have, is it just doesn't, why change the penguin, right? That said, the way the penguin is portrayed is pretty interesting, because you have some very classic penguin-esque stuff, and she is completely ruthless. And the plot of the first episode is very 1930s, 1940s, which is great because it takes place in the 1930s. But, in a lot of those, you had a mad scientist build a laser gun, or you had somebody with an artillery cannon, and, lo and behold, what's the penguin have an artillery cannon? So that's pretty interesting. But, she's absolutely ruthless. She, very murderous. Her plan is very simple, and I think that was kind of the point of the story, was just, hey, let's have a simple story, a simple plot, introduce these characters. Appearance-wise, I'll go ahead and let this clip speak for itself. So this is Batman, first of all. I really like this look for Batman. I think it's a good design. It harkens back to the 1940s era Batman a little bit. And, that's the point.
Well, I'll be damned, Virginia.
So here you have the Penguin. You have all the traditional traits of the Penguin. Weirdly shaped, big nose, the monocle, the top hat, the tuxedo. It's all there. They didn't take it off into some wild direction. They did change the gender for no apparent reason. But so the other thing is, this is the 1930s, and Gotham is extremely diverse. Okay, depending on how you look at it. A lot of people are taking it as, diversity, inclusion, and equity, and all that stuff. Woke, etc. At the same time, it's a cartoon for kids, and you kind of make some concessions along those lines anymore. And it's a very fictional 1930s. It's not a historical 1930s by any stretch of the imagination. I don't have a huge problem with that, but it is very noticeable where you're like, okay, this is the 1930s. A lot of the people in these positions wouldn't be. At the same time, it's a superhero show and clearly alternate reality. It's not that big of a deal. And again, it's treated very naturally. No one's ever like, well, there's how those really woke properties have a tendency to actually like lecture the audience about how, Batwoman famously did it where the guy says, no, the Batsuit's perfect, and she says it will be when it fits a woman. That kind of thing. That kind of like stand up and look at the audience and tell you this is a superior way to do things. That never happens. And I think if it did, it would immediately break everything about the show, because you just notice it all the time. Instead of being like, oh yeah, that's Barbara Gordon, she's black, whatever. Oh, that's the Penguin, she's a woman, whatever. Nobody responds to any of that. Again, first episode here. But anyway, here.
There really is a Batman. Iggy, break this jerk in half.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I like the animation. It's kind of a modernized version of the Batman animated series, and I think it does pretty well. I will say, the vehicles... It's like they tried to 2D everything except the vehicles, and then like, let's do 3D, but then they didn't spend any money on it. So, especially the cars. That part looks really bad. I also just love that. That's very, very old school. Superhero kind of show thing. The villain in the background is loading the weapon, and Batman's fighting this henchman, and they both get in the way, and the villain just quietly stands by and waits until they get out of the way. I like that.
Scratch one police station.
So, I don't want to show this whole thing, but I just wanted to show you how some of the animation looks, how she speaks and looks. The first episode, I enjoyed it. There's stuff about it, the cars just about took me out. And the unnecessary race and gender swapping. Look, Barbara Gordon's black. Jim Gordon is black. The Penguin's a woman. Harley Quinn's not in this episode, but later on she's Asian. Stuff like that, you're just kind of... It's just not necessary. To me, if you're going to do something like that, it needs to be for a purpose. So, Tim Burton famously made Harvey Dent a black guy. Cast him as a black guy. I forget the name of the actor, but it's not Not really important to this. And nobody cared. 1989 Batman. Everybody was more concerned about the movie. And nobody really cared about that part. And nobody talks about it to this day. The people who love that movie, myself included, never really bring it up. Well, Tim Burton did it for a reason. It was a weird Tim Burton-y reason, but he did it for a reason because he planned to eventually, in a potential sequel, have Harvey Dent become Two-Face. And he was going to do his normal black face on one side and a white face on the other, as a different take on Two-Face, and he wanted that contrast. It's a little weird, but that's why he did it. He had a purpose for doing it, outside of some kind of agenda or something. The problem with doing these race and gender swaps is it just looks like you're doing it just because you think you need to, and then it's not addressed in the show, which is great. But because you do that, and instead of just introducing new characters or introducing existing characters that are those things, it just looks weird. And it's why you're getting all these calls of DEI and woke. And it's like, I hesitate to call it that. The alternate casting, we'll call it, is very unnecessary. It does nothing for the show whatsoever. But it's not, again, this is episode 1. It's not making a deal out of it either. So it's just like, you just did it because you thought you needed to. And I think to kind of differentiate it from other Batman shows. And I think all that's just weird. It's unnecessary. There are plenty of female characters and plenty of black characters and plenty of Asian characters in Batman already. Just bring those in. This show does a good job in other episodes, from what I've seen, of bringing in villains that don't necessarily get a lot of the spotlight in other shows. And I think that's great. It's just, this kind of thing is just unnecessary, and it creates these stupid arguments about, oh, is it woke, is it DI? And what that does is it causes people to just disregard it. Instead of watching the show for its own merits. You see a lot of this from Nerdrotic and from Friday Night Tights, and they just dismiss the show. And they watch parts of it and they tell you, oh, Harley Quinn's fat, and I want to point to that too for a second. So Alfred in this is fat, without question. And I don't like the way Alfred's depicted, because Alfred's like just another employee of Batman, and he treats him like that, and I just don't like that setup at all. But again, it's just kind of like hey, we're going to do this to be different, and Alfred's going to be overweight for reasons. Harley Quinn's not fat. I'm sorry, that's a stupid criticism. This is from a later episode.
Look, I don't...
That's not a fat woman. I'm sorry. She's not thin, but she's not fat. It's just a dumb criticism. I wish people would criticize these shows for what's in them, rather than just saying any woman who's over 90 pounds is fat. That's stupid. That's not a fat character. It's a different take on Harley Quinn. I get it. I kind of like the color palette, actually. Not sure I like the character, but we'll see when I actually get into it. But different take on Harley Quinn, I get it. Still, let's criticize what's actually in the show. Okay? If you want to criticize that she's Asian for literally no reason whatsoever, go ahead. But calling her fat is stupid. And that's why this whole argument, I'm trying to not just jump off a bridge and go, woke, 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 woke. Because there's dumb stuff that doesn't add to the show, and you can probably guess why it's done. But it also doesn't detract from the show, and it doesn't have those weird stand-up moments that I call them, where they stand up and, oh, well, it would be if it was for a woman. So it's kind of a weird spot in the first episode, but the first episode's entertaining. And Batman is Batman, and he's early on in his career, so he makes some mistakes. That's okay. It's like his second week on the job. You see him grow. presumably over time. So, I think give the first episode a shot. Disregard all this stuff about DI and woke. Don't even think about it. Just go watch the show and then make your judgment. And I think it has the potential to absolutely go that route. But one episode at a time, episode 1, I haven't seen that. Sorry. I've seen unnecessary casting changes, or what we would call casting changes for live action, that I don't support or agree with. But as far as like a woke story and woke storytelling, and Batman would normally in that situation be put down by female characters, etc., etc., none of that's happening. And Batman was very Batman. It was a good episode. I liked it. So we'll kind of see where things go from here. I know I have seen people talk about, Batman doesn't act like Batman. It shows him with a gun. The inspiration for this was the 30s and 40s Batman. It was a very different character. And I think you need to be prepared for that in this show. That he might be a little bit darker or a little bit different than what you're used to, because they're taking that inspiration. There's nothing wrong with going in and saying, hey, let's take a look at the older comics. Those aren't usually addressed. Let's look into those and take some inspiration from that. I have no problem with that, especially if you're going to set it in that time period. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm going to watch the second episode, and we'll do another video on that down the road. But as far as the first episode, I think it's fine. It's not. I'm not going to write home about it. But it's fine. It was entertaining. I didn't regret watching it. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Ring the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time.